This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to Global Business live from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. It's 9 p.m. here in East Africa, and wherever you're joining us from, welcome to the show. I am Peninah Karibe. Let's begin with a look at the market. South Africa's stocks fell along with global equities as the unrest in Hong Kong pushed Asian stocks to their worst day since August and stoked demand for yen and gold. The all-share index fell 0.94% to 56,086 points. However, gold miners were buoyed by a rise in the gold prices off the back of fresh doubts over whether China and the US can strike a trade deal. Coming up on the show tonight. Thousands of business delegates are in South Africa for the second Africa Investment Forum. A Chinese firm to invest $1.5 billion in British steel in order to rescue the UK steelmaker. And Jumia is planning to use the Black Friday campaign to promote e-commerce in Africa. More than 2,000 delegates are meeting at the Sandton Convention Center for 3 days of networking, discussions and deal-making. It's the second Africa Investment Forum taking place in South Africa. CGTN's Angelo Coppola has more.
The organizers have built the forum as a transactional investment marketplace. Last year's meetings gathered deals valued at around $38.7 billion in 3 days. Expectations are higher this year, and that's being driven by the African Continental Free Trade Area and a desire to take back control of the continent's future.
We also want to generate our own energy. We want to see greater local beneficiation in our mining and minerals industries. We want to produce our own goods for our own domestic markets and for export. We want to be able to stitch, to stamp, and to chisel the words proudly made in Rwanda, proudly made in Ghana, proudly made in Mozambique, proudly made in Togo, and proudly made in South Africa. Garments, mobile phones, computers, and cars, you name it. We want it to be made here.
Part of that drive will involve changing the investment narrative, which includes a rebranding and a repositioning of the continent, which appears to be attracting investor interest.
That we have at the forum several institutional investors from Africa and outside of Africa. The size of the assets under management in Africa is over $1.8 trillion. Globally, assets under management exceeds $145 billion. What's needed to close the $68 to $108 billion annual infrastructure finance gap for Africa is to leverage institutional investors. And for that, we must develop more bankable projects, develop wider pools of risk mitigation instruments, and standardize our product offerings as multilateral development banks and financial institutions.
Delegates have had high expectations for the inaugural forum. Most of those expectations were met. The SkyTrain in Accra, Ghana, is a case in point.
I was here last year when this was initiated, and I'm also here to see that this critical step towards the consummation of this project is being taken this afternoon. It is vivid testimony of the value of the African Investment Forum. The consortium is led by a Ghanaian, and that we have to come here to Johannesburg to meet another Ghanaian, to do business for Ghana. Somehow or other, I don't know, it works out, I think.
The talking part of this 3-day meeting is now over. It's now down to those boardrooms behind closed doors where the deals and the negotiations actually start. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Sandton, South Africa.
Ghana's Securities and Exchange Commission has revoked the licenses of 53 fund management companies. According to the SEC, the decision comes after the company's failure to pay client funds, which remain locked up. It also says some of the fund management firms were becoming insolvent and were violating several investment rules. 21 out of the 53 firms were already out of business before the decision to revoke their licenses was taken. The fund management firms looked after at least 56,000 investors with combined assets of over $1 billion. Let's get more details now from Nabil Ahmed Rafai. He's live for us in Accra. Nabil, 53 fund management companies, they've all been closed for failing to return client funds. How much money are we talking about that is locked up in these companies?
Hello, Peninah. We are talking about over $1 billion that have been locked up, and we are learning that these amounts captures an estimated 56,000 customers of these fund management firms. We know that the Securities and Exchange Commission is saying that it's going to withhold issuance of new licenses to anyone who wants to operate in that sector for at least 6 months while it tries to really sanitize the system at the moment. Peninah.
So over $1 billion, I mean, that's a staggering amount. What redress are clients getting to claim back their money?
For now, government says it has set up some fund that it will be using to pay these investors who have their monies locked up. We are not certain the amount of money that government has set aside as of yet. The Securities and Exchange Commission has not been able to give us the amount of money that has been set aside yet, but it says there is a capped amount that these investors will receive in the interim while it heads to the High Court to secure an order where there will be an appointment of a receiver or an agent who will work with the Registrar General's department to actually pay these investors their money. We know that when they are able to secure an order from the High Court, the agents will actually be able to retrieve some of the assets of these fund management companies and also liquidate them in order to get money to pay back these investors. Peninah.
So Nabil, we know the financial sector has been undergoing cleanup since August 2017, but what has changed since then, and are clients now more protected?
Indeed, since 2017, we've seen 9 indigenous banks go under, they've collapsed, and also we've seen over 300 microfinance and savings and loans companies also being shut down, all in a bid to sanitize the financial and banking sector. For now, the government is saying that these activities that it undertook since 2017 up until now has indeed boosted confidence in the banking sector. It's saying that the bank's assets as of June 2019 has actually shot up to over $20 billion. It's also saying that the banks that are now in the system are also abiding by the regulations, and there is now a good business environment where people can really deposit their money and be assured that indeed their money is being protected.
All right, Nabil, thank you for that update. Nabil Ahmed Rafai live for us in Accra, Ghana. Up next, we're looking at your corporate news. Kenya's KCB Group has retreated from an earlier plan of integrating National Bank of Kenya into its operations after the September merger of the two lenders. It says it fears loss of deposits as well as customers. NBK will continue to operate as a standalone subsidiary of KCB, a departure from the earlier plan of integrating the operations of the two banks within 2 years. South African lender Absa says its representative office in New York should be operational by the end of the year after it received the necessary regulatory approvals. The office is aimed at enabling Absa to better serve clients, including international corporations and institutions that invest or work in Africa. The bank already has an office in London and is looking at other locations, including in Asia. South African mobile operator Vodacom has reported an 18.9% rise in half-year profits. The growth is partly attributed to the absence of one-off costs related to a share scheme offered to black investors. After initially rising, Vodacom's shares fell over 2% despite the improved result, with revenue flat in South Africa and growth in overall group service revenue slowing. And Qantas Airways says it has found structural cracks in 3 of its Boeing 737 NG planes. The airline found the flaws after conducting earlier than required checks of its aircraft as part of a global issue with the model. The cracks are on what is known as the pickle fork, a part that attaches the plane's body to the wing structure. And that is a wrap of your corporate news. You're watching Global Business. Coming up, Zimbabwe's much anticipated new banknotes are still not in circulation. And Tunisia's real estate sector is in shambles. We'll tell you why after this short break.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sandra Wilson. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how whole stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back to Global Business. During the week-long China International Import Expo, deals worth $71.1 billion were signed. 32% of the deals are in manufacturing and 25% from the wholesale and retail industry. The event is the brainchild of Chinese President Xi Jinping and is aimed at showing the country's openness to importing foreign goods. CGTN's Yasser Akim met with two businessmen who have been trading with Chinese companies in the last few years.
Mohammed Qasim manufactures textiles and ready-made clothing. He exports to China and says it's an extremely lucrative market.
مجال التصدير ليها It's an important market for two reasons. First, because of the high rate of growth in the middle class, a large number of Chinese have elevated from poverty and now possess a strong purchasing power, allowing them to import much more than before. Secondly, is that the Chinese authorities are encouraging exporters such as us to increase our exports to the Chinese markets.
For Qasim, it's not easy to infiltrate China.
We have received many facilities from the Chinese government to export to China. For example, we are invited to many trade shows and trade fairs in China to help market our products there. The Chinese market is very competitive and diverse, depending on the region. It requires a lot of effort, a lot of funding, and time to be able to succeed in China.
Most of Egypt's exports to China are agricultural products, ceramics and clothes. Bilateral trade is about $15 billion a year, with an average annual increase of around 5%. The balance of trade, however, lies heavily with China, with more than 90% of trade is Chinese products to Egypt, while Egyptian products to China are only $2 billion out of $15 billion. Chinese products to Egypt range in everything from mobiles, cars, home appliances, and much more. Mohammed Shiha is the president of the Importers Chamber at the Businessmen Association. He imports a variety of goods including electronics and home appliances from China. Shiha says he enjoys working with his Chinese counterparts.
We used to work with Japan before, but when we met with the Chinese businessmen and saw their products, we slowly changed our plans. Now 70% of our trade is with the Chinese companies. The Chinese products have a good quality and competitive price. I also like working with the Chinese because they are prompt and accurate in their work, and they also improve and constantly develop their products.
Being the economic force it is, there are lessons to be learned from China's success.
It's an impressive and unique experience. They set up a strategy and plan and they executed it successfully. Since the 70s, they have focused on production and industrialization. This long-term vision and aggressive plan brought with it economic success.
And Egyptian businessmen hope the CIIE would further enhance trade between both countries. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
The ECOWAS Startups and SMEs Forum was held in Cote d'Ivoire's capital Abidjan from 5th to 9th November. This third edition aimed at highlighting young Africans who have innovative ideas for improving people's daily lives. CGTN's Alexandria Majala has more details.
About 20 young project leaders took part in the third edition of the ECOWAS Startups and SMEs Forum. Kevin Cisse was one of the youth representing his business at the event. His company, My Artisan, connects small businesses with service seekers. He currently employs 20 people with an annual turnover of over $84,000.
I am here today to share my experience. All I can say to all these young project leaders is to be resilient and courageous. I also encourage them not to be rigid and especially to test the market before launching.
This year's event was held under the theme Innovation for Peace in the ECOWAS region. While Ivorian startups are constantly evolving in terms of initiative and dynamism, some say much remains to be done to make the businesses sustainable.
We notice that these startups are often uninformed. That's why they usually have problems evolving. There is also mismanagement. So we ask them to learn, to train themselves to manage their startups, but also be persistent.
During the 4-day event, participants took part in panel discussions as well as the Pitch Innov contest. 3 projects were awarded in the competition.
This competition has allowed us to gauge our project in front of the people who are entitled to do it. This prize gives us confidence because we want our startup, Akiliti, in the medium term, to reach all the countries of the sub-region.
The laureates have just won tickets to participate in an international forum in the United States. It brings great satisfaction to us. However, we want to invite sponsors to support the entrepreneurship to enable these young people to become champions in their nation.
Statistics show that West Africa has the most startups on the continent, followed by East Africa. Nigeria tops that list, followed by Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
In Zimbabwe, new low-denomination banknotes were expected to enter circulation. However, the new currency failed to arrive as per the set date. The move was expected to bring stability to the acute cash shortage that has restricted the efficiency of the economy. Dr. Davison Gomo is an economic and political analyst, and he joins us live from Harare. For more on this, Dr. Gomo, are these new notes the answer to the country's economic crisis?
Thank you very much. I just want to say that economic problems can never be solved by one decision, but this particular one is very critical and very important, because you know very well that Zimbabwe has been going through a number of very serious challenges, and the currency being just one of them. You know very well that not in so much of a distant past, with a lot of trading taking place outside the formal system, I'm sure that with the various reforms that government has taken, they've made a very good judgment, and they're satisfied that the introduction of the currency notes that you refer to will stabilize the current cash shortage. There hasn't been quite a lot of money in circulation, and you know that this has been troubling our people, and to a very large extent it's affected our economy, it's affected the confidence of the people, and the truth is that everyone hopes that this little injection is going to stabilize the situation a little bit. It's only one of many possible steps and measures that are required, and I don't think this is the last time we'll see this happen. It's only but the beginning, and government will be monitoring the situation very, very carefully to make sure that they don't cause problems by trying to solve another one.
All right, so the new currency will have denominations of coins and notes with a maximum value of 5 Zimbabwe dollars. Why has the government opted to go for low denomination currency?
I think that's very important to avoid a situation, obviously, where if you introduced much larger denominations, the possibility of people abusing that would be very high. You'll need bags and bags of that in order to do something unacceptable. If in fact one had that inclination, I think what you're doing is to release that in the small denominations in order to build the confidence of the people very slowly and stabilize the environment. Once people are very happy and they are assured that in fact the cash is available when they want it, and of course the other fundamentals are improving, I'm sure that government will adjust that, although naturally on a very measured basis. They're never going to be in a hurry to do what is ideal, because we still have to make sure that confidence retains to the banking sector, and people can trust their own money and use it properly, of course, because you know some of the challenges have been that there's been a lot of misuse of cash in Zimbabwe, and we are hoping that slowly but careful people will begin to understand that there's need to trade like any other normal country, using that currency very responsibly through the banking system, and allow everybody to have a chance to lay their hands on the money and obviously transact in the normal way, and that way we bring the stability that we so desperately needs.
All right,
in our economy.
So you did mention that this new currency alone is not enough to sort out the country's economic problems. So my question is, what are the economic reforms necessary to turn around the fortunes of Zimbabwe?
I think government has been doing quite a lot of things and looking at various options. You know, obviously, one of the most important things is to make sure that government lives well within its means, but most critically, of course, is making sure that the entire area of the private sector is reformed to create a space and an environment in which businesses find it very, very easy to transact, to run their businesses, eliminate bureaucracy, and you can tell obviously from the country ratings that Zimbabwe has marginally moved upwards, which it clearly demonstrates and indicates that government is cognizant of the need to make sure that they eliminate all those bottlenecks that usually stifle business. And the most critical thing also is to make sure that in line with the government's desire to bring a lot of foreign businesses into the country, you want to create a space where the foreign investor feels very, very comfortable that Zimbabwe has eliminated all potential risks to their investment. And these reforms are ongoing, and so far all indications are that we are going in the right direction, because we've been coming from a very, very low position. Confidence is rising, and I'm sure that every little piece of effort in terms of general reforms, economic reforms, business reforms, legal reforms, political reforms, expanding the democratic space. Although many people will have different ideas, we can live with that, it's acceptable. But quite frankly, bit by bit, the country is moving in the right direction, and they're very clear about the vision and the direction we are taking to make sure that Zimbabwe can become a very much normal economy, and it can start competing maybe initially with the countries in the region and eventually with countries from the entire globe.
All right, Dr. Davison Gomo in Harare, many thanks. Now, the first South African project to bring illegal miners into the formal fold has been plagued by violence in the diamond capital of Kimberley. The aim of the government-backed scheme was to curb illegal mining and black market trade of diamonds, as well as manganese, gold and chrome. But that has not been the case, as CGTN's Daniel Arap-Moy explains.
Home to the largest man-made hole on earth, this is Kimberley. This city has yielded some of the world's largest diamonds. However, despite that, Kimberley is still far from glory. The first South African project to bring illegal miners into the formal fold has been afflicting violence in the diamond capital. The project is a first of its kind in Africa's most industrialized economy. It's aimed at curbing illegal mining and black market trade of diamonds. However, according to reports, informal miners not included in the scheme have been attacking infrastructure and members of the newly licensed cooperative.
But the problem that we are encountering now, it is from other Zamazamas. The other Zamazamas, when they come here, because they are not registered, they want to enter this field with force. They came here with the weapons, others came here with firearms.
The failure of the pilot scheme is also a major blow to efforts to stem booming illicit trade. Kimberley's last diamond miner, Ekapa, says nearly 500,000 worth of diamonds are taken by illegal miners each month. In a bid to end that, the company organized 836 miners into the Batho Pele Mining Cooperative and gave them a license. However, that track record is not promising.
We have literally fired many thousand rounds of rubber bullet shotgun rounds to keep the illegal miners off our property on a regular basis, and our fences are continuously being ripped out, removed or just destroyed. If there is no resolve to controlling the illegal activities, which is snowballing into a tremendous threat of sabotage to our operation, the costs will go back up again to the point that we are unable to sustain it. And we may be forced to close the company down. That is the severe consideration of this illegal mining.
With joblessness at an 11-year high and the economy in distress, regular income is out of reach for many South Africans. But even should formalization projects like that at Kimberley ultimately prove successful, another question looms in the longer term. What happens to the small-scale miners when the resources run out? And where do they go? Daniel Arap-Moy, CGTN.
Real estate developers in Tunisia have barely sold this year. In 2018, the Tunisian parliament approved the government's new VAT, which increased taxes from 1% to 13%. The VAT will increase to 19% in 2020. Consequently, the real estate, which employs over 1 million people, will be affected. CGTN's Adnet Shawashi has the details.
Tunisian professionals from the Union of Industry and Handicrafts have called on the new government in parliament to review the VAT in order to boost this vital economic sector.
The cost of property development is on the rise, while demand for new housing units and apartments is below expectation. High VAT discourages our potential clients. It has plunged the sector into an unprecedented crisis.
The North African country is hosting the International Housing Expo. Real estate developers have presented the latest infrastructure and housing projects. Several companies which dominate the market of building materials have acknowledged the extent of the crisis.
The inflation hit all building materials without exception because the cost of energy has skyrocketed by 50%. In 2019, making cement, iron, ceramic, bricks cost 40% more than in 2017.
Tunisia's middle class has deserted the real estate exhibition. Experts say the purchasing power deteriorates as overall prices increase.
The situation is critical. Many housing projects were completed but remained empty for 2 or 3 years. Ordinary people can no longer afford to buy property.
The National Institute of Statistics has revealed that apartment prices jumped 13.5% in the second quarter of 2019 compared to the same period of 2018, while house prices rose 11%. The Confederation of Industry and the Union of Property Developers have urged the state to intervene and to save this domain, which is on the verge of collapse. The real estate crisis has also affected the banking and insurance sectors. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
You're watching Global Business. Coming up after the break. A Chinese firm to invest $1.5 billion in British steel in order to rescue the UK steelmaker. And Alibaba breaks Singles Day record with more than $38 billion in sales.
No one again began holding guns. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
Economic data out of the country.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Peninah Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's
changing perspectives.
Reporting from Nairobi City Center.
News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
And looking at other stories we are following today, Ethiopia is currently battling a desert locust outbreak which is devastating swathes of farmland in parts of the country. The UN warns that there is a need to urgently scale up measures to prevent the infestation spreading across the border. Over $300 million is needed to help Malawi recover from the devastating effects of Cyclone Zidai and Kenneth. According to the government, pledges made by international donors have not been forthcoming, leaving many households in dire need of assistance. And in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the army has killed a Rwandan militia leader and 4 of his bodyguards in an operation near the DRC-Uganda border. The commander of the Democratic Forces, General Juvenal Musabyimana, was killed in an intense battle in North Kivu province. And those are some of the day's top stories. Chinese industrial conglomerate Jingye will invest $1.5 billion in British steel in a deal that will save up to 4,000 jobs. This marks an end to the months of uncertainty hanging over the UK's second-largest steelmaker, which has been under liquidation since May. The sale and purchase agreement has been signed, but that deal has not yet been completely finalized. Completion of the contract is conditional on a number of matters, including gaining the necessary regulatory approvals. Jingye has earmarked the investment for the sole purpose of upgrading plants and machinery, improving the company's performance and boost energy efficiency. Sandra Wilson is following this story for us and joins us live from London. Why is this news so important, Andrew?
Well, I think first and foremost, of course, there are 4,000 jobs that had this question mark over them since May this year. And British Steel has had a tricky time since 2016, so these jobs have always been precarious for the people who've tried to keep them going. Those jobs now, it's understood, although of course the paperwork hasn't been finalised, a lot of those should be saved. So that's a good news story, and that's a good news story for the government as well, because we're in an election period now, and the government wants to be able to say that they're creating jobs rather than seeing jobs disappear and industry go under. So that's the main point. But behind that, of course, steel in the UK, alongside coal mining and shipbuilding, is an iconic 20th century basis of the manufacturing industry, where Britain was such a powerful economy in the early part of the 20th century. And that's something that people have been sad over the years and decades to see disappear, first with the coal mining, then shipbuilding. So the preservation of something as iconic as a small steel plant, nothing compared to what it used to be in the 1980s, but nevertheless the preservation of that is something that gives generally the lift to the news here across the UK today.
All right, so Jingye says it anticipated making job offers to as many employees across the business as possible. Do we know the targeted number?
No, it appears that that number is still vague. There was a meeting between the Business Secretary, Andrea Leadsom, here in Whitehall, and the management of Jingye, and they said that she reported, they said they would try to save next to all the jobs currently being held on Scunthorpe. But this is how the process will work. First of all, once the paperwork finally goes through, the liquidator will make all the staff redundant. The very next day, they'll be able to apply for their jobs with their new owner. Now, it's not clear how many will be hired, although the signs coming from Beijing is that there's an enthusiasm to hire as many as possible, but the terms and conditions might also change as well. So that may be a different reality on the ground to what the workers in Scunthorpe have understood up until now. But it is also a matter of record now that Jumia is interested in spending $1.5 billion over the next 10 years. Now, that's an unheard of amount of investment into a British steel company over the last few decades. So the hope is that that might lead to even more expansion and therefore more jobs down the line. The word efficiencies has been mentioned, which often people think of as referring to redundancies. But at the same time, there is an understanding that the new owners will be looking to up the amount of steel being created from 2.5 million tonnes to about 3 million tonnes a year, and also looking and exploring new markets as well. All that spells optimism for the workers in Teesside and Scunthorpe.
All right, so with this new deal, will British Steel now turn the corner?
Well, one hopes so. I think it's had an extraordinary history, British Steel, from being when it was nationalised and then privatised in 1988 under the Thatcher government, and then went from owner to owner. The most embarrassing episode in British Steel's recent history was when it sold by Tata Steel to a company that specialises in turning failed companies around. That's Grey Bull Capital. It was sold to them for £1 in the spring of 2016. It did turn a profit then from 2017 and 2018, but Grey Bull seemed to be quite a secretive owner of British Steel, and it wasn't clear how the loans were being dealt with on the ground and how much of the loans were going back into investment. Then all of a sudden, it went into receivership in May. So the promise of $1.5 billion investment is something that means that perhaps indeed British Steel has brighter days ahead. It is an exclusive producer, as far as Jumia is concerned, of long railway lines, railway tracks, and also of the long girders used in the construction sector. These are something that they can't make in Beijing. The blast furnaces aren't appropriate for it, so they do need Scunthorpe for that, which means that if there is an investment in a new product, then possibly there will be some power and some investment coming in from the new owners to get that production increased over the years. So it is possible that British Steel will carry on providing a third of Britain's steel and perhaps even an increase on that, which generally Britons will like to see. It's a name people remember, and they remember fondly in this country.
All right, Andrew, thank you very much for that. Andrew Wilson, live for us in London. Now, the world's largest oil company, Saudi Aramco, has released its prospectus for its second attempt at a long-delayed public offering. CGTN's Jacob Greaves has the details from Dubai.
One of the key takeaways from this prospectus is that Saudi Aramco will sell 0.5% of its shares to individual retail investors, with the offering of shares set to begin on November the 17th. However, the 600-page prospectus doesn't mention how much of the company in total will be floated. It also doesn't shed any further light on who the anchor investors might be. Aramco has been in talks with Gulf and Asian sovereign wealth funds, as well as wealthy Saudi individuals, but as of yet there's been no official announcement concerning a deal with an anchor investor. As for more information we can glean from this impacting potential investors, well, the Saudi government will have a lock-up period of a year on further share sales after the initial public offering. Also, the document specifies Aramco may change its dividend policy without prior notice for minority investors. The prospectus also outlines some of the main risks to Saudi Aramco's operation, highlighting the potential for terrorist attacks. It was only back in September that two key Saudi Aramco oil facilities were targeted, temporarily taking offline around 5% of global supply. Also listed are reminders that this is still set to be a majority state-owned company, with the Saudi government still able to make key decisions concerning Aramco's strategy. The prospectus emphasises that the Saudi government maintains the right to decide maximum crude output and can direct Aramco to undertake projects outside its core business. This Aramco IPO has become the poster child of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's attempts to diversify the Saudi economy, but some key details still remain elusive, chiefly how many shares will be offered in total and what price tag the valuation placed on the company itself. Jacob Greaves, CGTN in Dubai.
Let's turn our attention to Athens now, where Chinese President Xi Jinping and Greek President Prokopis Pavlopoulos have held talks. She is in Greece for a 3-day state visit. It's the first state visit by a Chinese leader to Greece in 11 years. The leaders have so far signed 16 deals. They have also discussed their long histories with civilizations that date back to ancient times. President Xi spoke of their mutual trust, citing the joint development of the port of Piraeus as a manifestation of that trust. The project is also part of the cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative.
Both sides see China and Greece as natural partners for building the Belt and Road. We would like to mesh the Belt and Road Initiative more closely with the development strategy of this country. We look forward to implementing cooperation plans in priority areas and to fully leverage the transshipment role of the port of Piraeus and to further strengthen the transportation capacity of the China-Europe Land-Sea Express Line. I'm sure we'll make the most of the Joint Committee on Economy and Trade and continually expand two-way trade and mutual investment and to unleash the potential in energy, transportation, and financial cooperation.
And this marks the important thing in the day. I'm talking about the signing of 16 government and business agreements between Greece and China and many levels and many different sectors. So this is a road that we've now opened, but this road will soon become a highway because our bilateral collaboration will become even stronger.
Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba set a sales record on Singles Day, the world's largest 24-hour shopping event. Gross merchandise value, a figure that shows sales across Alibaba's shopping platforms, surpassed last year's nearly $30.5 billion on Monday afternoon and kept rising through the rest of the day. At the end of the event, GMV stood at $38.3 billion, just under a 26% rise from the figure posted last year. That's a slower growth rate than the 27% seen on last year's Singles Day. This was the 11th edition of the annual Singles Day event, also called the Double 11 Shopping Festival. Alibaba's Singles Day sales last year exceeded the spending by consumers during any single U.S. shopping holiday, such as Black Friday or Cyber Monday. As the rest of Asia and even some European players join this year's Singles Day shopping craze, domestically, Chinese e-commerce landscape has one marked difference now, a wider gap between the top two in e-commerce. CGTN's Xie Cheng explains why.
Alibaba and JD.com are further apart in sales, consumer base, and market value. Analysts believe Pinduoduo has become the runner-up to Alibaba, and the company's burning cash to win customers during the Singles Day shopping fest. Pinduoduo had more new users in the second quarter than Alibaba and JD.com combined. Those new users are not just entering the e-commerce space. The bulk of them are existing online shoppers in big metropolises who have been loyal to Alibaba and JD.com. Consumers in big cities are contributing to half of Pinduoduo's revenues. That means Pinduoduo is redirecting some of the traffic from Alibaba and JD, and not vice versa for now. That's because Pinduoduo has been rising from the grassroots. It is a dominant player in smaller cities and rural areas, rivaling Alibaba. Alibaba and JD.com are fighting back, but it will be pricey as consumers there have much smaller budgets. And JD.com's self-run fast delivery model is particularly costly in this case. JD.com is known for running things similar to Amazon does. It has super fast deliveries thanks to its in-house distribution system. It also sells products directly to shoppers. That earns the company loyal customers who fuss about the unpredictable delivery when buying on Alibaba, who mostly entrust shipping to courier partners. But JD's bread and butter is also a curse. JD.com will probably spend more than Alibaba from now on to cover lower-tier cities, as self-sufficient distribution centers are much more expensive than signing new couriers. Plus, Alibaba is reportedly investing at least 100 billion yuan in its logistics network. So, quite a fight in the grassroots. Overall, Alibaba still owns more than half of the Chinese market, while JD.com takes home a quarter. Xia Cheng, CGTN.
Let's look at the commodities market. Oil prices dipped today after U.S. President Donald Trump appeared to downplay reports of an imminent lifting of tariffs in a protracted U.S.-Chinese trade war. Crude oil was down 0.19% at $62.39. Gold prices, on the other hand, edged up after touching a three-month low in the previous session. Gold buying by central banks, especially in China, is helping boost those prices. Still ahead on Global Business. Jumia is planning to use the Black Friday campaign to promote e-commerce in Africa. And Accra's SkyTrain is moving closer and closer to reality thanks to the Africa Investment Forum.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
The greatest journeys. The greatest sights. The greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back to Global Business. Online trading has been gaining in popularity in many parts of Africa. The continent's leading e-commerce platform, Jumia, says it plans to use its Black Friday campaign to increase access across Africa. In Nigeria, its largest market, the firm has already kicked off its Black Friday drive, saying it hopes to attract a surge of new shoppers during the period. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmas with more on that story.
Every ardent online shopper in Nigeria, like Annetta Felix, always looks forward to the month of November when Jumia runs its Black Friday campaign. And it's mainly for one reason.
I was looking forward to getting a gift for a friend, and it turns out that I checked Jumia, and there's a shoe going for 13,000 naira. But when I looked it up on Jumia, it was about 3,000. I was blown away. So deals like that just makes people keep coming back.
So for the next 3 weeks, she and other online shoppers on the Jumia platform can expect some of the best deals and massive discounts, as well as flash sales on a wide variety of products. The Africa online giant says over 12,000 sellers are listing 10 million products on its platform during its Black Friday campaign.
With Black Friday deals like this, coupled with campaigns with social media influencers, would allow people to realize that it's actually cheaper to shop online. Delivery fee, anybody might complain of, is even just a fraction of what you spend, in transportation from your house to the far off market, So yes, this Black Friday deals would enable more people, accept the culture of online shopping.
Truth be told, some of the deals are mind-blowing. The discounts are massive. And for instance, some of the top-selling items here come with discounts of over 70%. It's no question that most people would find it irresistible. And it's the reason why Jumia says it hopes to see a surge of new shoppers during the campaign period, with the company's head of growth saying, quote, "It's an avenue for the conversion of bricks and mortar shoppers to online shoppers, for them to experience the ease and time-saving benefits that come with e-commerce," end of quote.
I think the number can increase when the network system is good, because the strength of the network is still pretty poor in Nigeria or Africa. But I know if it's very good, I am very sure people would shop online more than before.
E-commerce is still very low in Africa, where the retail business is still predominantly bricks and mortar. But the potential for growth is huge. Internet penetration is growing. The cost of data is gradually coming down. Smartphone users are going up. So also is the level of literacy. These are some of the potentials Africa online marketplaces like Jumia, Kilimall, Konga and others are leveraging on to increase e-commerce access on the continent. Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
The Accra SkyTrain moved a step closer to reality at the Africa Investment Forum happening in Santon. It is a project between the Government of Ghana and Africa Investment SkyTrain Consortium from South Africa. It's aimed at easing traffic congestion in Accra. Angelo Coppola has the story.
The project first saw the light of day at last year's inaugural African Investment Forum in South Africa. Today saw the signing of the concession agreement. A detailed feasibility study will now follow.
And hopefully the step that is being taken today, signing the concession, means that the project itself is that much nearer a conclusion. That is what we're hoping for, so that the people of Ghana could benefit from the progress and the relief that a modern system of communication in our capital city is going to bring.
This is what the Africa Investment Forum is about. We provide a platform, but our heads of state play crucial roles in making deals happen.
The concession agreement was signed with lenders in mind, which analysts suggest points to a bankable project.
We should be able to reach financial close within a year from now, and that's the hope, and then we can start the construction around that time. In terms of the jobs created, during construction, we anticipate there'll be over 5,000 jobs just during the construction phase.
The SkyTrain project is a city rail network, something that is essential as the capital city transforms itself.
Today in Ghana, there are more people in the urban areas than in the rural areas. And a project of this nature will transform the cost of living, will transform our nation, will transform our urban areas.
While it's a city-specific project, it's the single biggest infrastructure project ever conceptualized and conceived on the continent. It's valued at around $2.6 billion.
Infrastructure is that foundation that's going to be needed to get the African free trade area up and running and profitable for everybody involved. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Santon, South Africa.
Let's look at the currencies now. The Kenyan shilling strengthened today to a 4-month high, boosted by dollar inflows from remittances and offshore investors buying shares on the stock market. South Africa's rand ended flat, with trading subdued by the trade deal stalemate between China and the United States. And with that, we come to the end of Global Business tonight. We welcome your feedback. Send it to the contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platforms. I'm Peninah Karibe. Thank you for watching.